The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is the West Stand, our brand new show for this season. You can find it normally on a Monday and Friday, subject to the football calendar. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it in your podcast app as well. Guests from the world of Leeds United. My name is Dan Moylan. Hello to you. And here is Michael Normanson.
Hello.
The show is brought to you with NordVPN. Do you want to mangle a read for NordVPN today, Michael?
It'll be my absolute pleasure. We're on ITV, aren't we?
We are.
We know the weekend.
There's a good song about that.
There is. When I used to work there, it was occasionally given an airing. We're on ITV X, I think it's called now. Works just as well as it used to when it was ITV Player, Hub.
I feel like you're really burning your bridges in terms of a comeback there if this goes tits up.
Yeah, it's not likely, is it?
No.
It's not likely. But you can watch Leeds there this weekend if you're in the UK.
How can you possibly do that?
But that's only if you're in the UK.
What if you're not?
You could pretend to be.
Right.
Using a VPN.
Right. What's that then? What's a VPN?
It's a virtual private network.
Right. So you log onto a server.
Bit of software goes on your phone, computer, whatever.
Up to 10 devices.
10 devices, and you can flit about all over the globe if you want.
Yeah, like a cyber tourist, and it'll protect you from threats. It'll keep your data safe. The fastest VPN in the world, and you can stop your ISP, your internet service provider, throttling your bandwidth as well. NordVPN.com/TSB for details of the offer there. It's a bonus. I think it's like a bonus number a month on top of the 2-year plan. But yeah, full details at the link, NordVPN.com/TSB. You'll also find the link in the episode description. 30-day money-back guarantee as well. So if you're not happy, no problem at all. Our guest now is AIDY. Hello, welcome back. Former Leeds United left back, occasional number 10.
Just a bit of everywhere, Dan, I prefer.
Yeah. And you've been doing some stuff with Radio Leeds as well recently,
I've been doing some co-coms for the games. So the last game I did was West Brom game, and then this weekend got the Pompey game.
Oh, so you're travelling down?
Yeah, travelling down, my first away one actually. So Johnny and Pope will be showing me the ropes of Portsmouth. And then obviously 3 points back up the road. See you Wednesday as well for Millwall at home.
We are due to speak to Pompey on the West Stand towards the back end of next week as well, so that should be fun.
We'll ask him about his trips around the docks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so you have to send us some reports about that, AIDY.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
In the meantime, we'll lead off on the news that Daniel Farke is the manager of the month for the Championship. That cursed. He looked delighted as ever.
He did. Someone put together, I saw on Twitter, someone had put together a little collage of his Manager of the Month awards, and he's trying to decide which is the grumpiest. I think this is top 2, I reckon, of the 5 he's had.
I was going to ask about how many he'd had. 5's not bad, is it, really? It's a decent return, for sure.
AIDY, what do you think of the job that he's done this season?
Yeah, tremendous. I mean, who can complain? We had an initial sort of, not a slow start, did we? But it took a little bit just to get into full swing. But the last few months, we've been a train, really, haven't we? Just gained momentum and kept ploughing on. Obviously, undefeated in 3 months or so. The West Brom game, it wasn't our best performance, but coming off those 2 really difficult games with wins, at Sunderland to Sunderland and away to Sheffield United, we can't really complain. I just felt like the West Brom game was a little bit of a hangover from that. But in terms of the job he's done, I think he's been fantastic. I think no matter who's going to be the manager, you're always going to have your critics, regardless. Some people don't like the way we play the game, but for me, it's very controlled and very efficient, and it most of the time gets the job done. So yeah, hopefully he gets promoted and a good crack at it next season as well.
Do you feel like in this last maybe month, 6 weeks, something like that, that people have enjoyed the football a little bit more because we've had these kind of high jeopardy, really exciting, thrilling moments, these finishes to games, and it's kind of the team's grown into it, I suppose, to an extent, and it's probably found its feet and its identity within the framework.
Yeah, I think it's always nice when you're getting last-minute winners, isn't it? Two Monday night winners like that. It's not often it comes around, and it's that little bit more exciting. I know we've had criticism earlier on in the season where games haven't been quite as exciting because of how much control and how much possession we have, and we just kind of dominate teams, where we have also now seen teams come to Ellen Road recently and open up a little bit more, want to give us more of a game, and West Brom certainly did that. Probably the best team in terms of possession that we've had at Ellen Road. But for me, I feel like going forward, the next stage is obviously just try to put this to bed as quickly as we can. It's still challenging. We've got a reasonable run in. Most of the teams we play are sort of mid-table, but I think if we can get it done as quickly as possible and we can all have a nice breather, then can't we? Not like last season.
Dan, have you got a spreadsheet with average league position or
Mate,
anything?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because
Thank God.
I just opened that tab on my browser. I have exactly that. Yeah, because all I've been trying to do is take comfort in numbers and data. And I know it's like, past performance is no indicator of future performance, but what you can do is analyse the season and see what you've actually been doing. Am I right to be going out of my mind? Because there's been a little bit of anxiety this week. So I have got it, Michael. Yeah, and our average opponent is basically about 16th in the league from now until the very end.
I want you to do a version of it incorporating a complicated algorithm of home and away and also form.
Right.
To judge how difficult games are.
Okay. All right.
Right off the bat now?
Yeah, exactly. What do you think? Redo it.
I think we're going up.
We're still going up.
We're going up as fucking champions.
That's all anyone really wants to hear, include most of all you. Yeah. That's the reason it's all happening.
Well, yeah, part of the reason why I took comfort in that is because Sheffield United's average opponent position is about just under 13th. Burnley is 11.73 at the minute, based on the table at the minute, and Sunderland, if you're going to count them in, it is about 12th. So we have, on paper at least, got the easiest running.
Interesting. Well, it's always good to hear, but paper doesn't always transfer, does it?
No.
It's weird that you like, for me now, as a player, I was never interested in data, really. I'd always go off how I felt, etc., things like that. You know how well you've played. Whereas now, as like more of a pundit and looking from the outside in, you go off data so much more. It never bothered me at all, really, before, obviously, within reasons. But now, I'm so like you, data-driven. So I'm looking at the Portsmouth game, for example, and I think they're maybe 1.71 points per game at home. We're 1.82 points per game away from home. So you're looking at that on paper, that looks like it could be a really good, decent game. But then you look at the league position and it's quite drastic. So let's hope for a good win, eh? Yeah,
so what are the players going to be talking about right now? And I know the old cliche is one game at a time, but presumably that's how they're going to be taking it. It's just another 3 points that's up for grabs. We go there, we do our job, we get those. Is that the message in the dressing room?
Yeah, quite simply. I don't think you can look too far ahead. It's sometimes a little bit dangerous, isn't it? You can never underestimate an opponent. And Portsmouth, the 3-3 at home, the first game of the season. It was a certainly entertaining start to the campaign. I think they've got a couple of injuries as well. I think their key man, Callum Lang's out. I think he's got like 10 goals this season.
Well, they've got the short on centre-backs. I think
right, as well.
The two centre-backs
Shaughnessy's out, isn't he?
I don't know. I thought he was being talked about as maybe being brought in, but I don't know if he's out as well.
Right.
But I think their two key centre-backs are both out at the minute. Because I did, again, trying to find comfort in things, I did start reading what their fans are saying, and there's almost chatter around, well, do we just make sure we get through this game, almost throw it a little bit, and then, because they've got Plymouth next, and then and Preston the next two games, where they're identifying opportunities to pick up points. So do they almost sacrifice this game against Leeds? Which I'd be quite happy if they did, I want to say.
I think it's the sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
Why not?
If they beat Plymouth, they would more or less cut themselves off from Plymouth, wouldn't they? Because they're already 9 points ahead of them. So I'm saying, absolutely, play the kids.
Right.
It just makes sense, and we'll take the win.
Their home record is played 17 at home. They've won 8, drawn 5, and only lost 4, conceded 16 goals at home. But then again, you look at what Coventry have been doing recently. Absolutely sparkling run of form, and they are going to have a big hand in what happens in the next couple of months, because they play all 3 of Burnley, Sheffield United and Sunderland. Great bunch of lads. Frank Lampard.
Love him, don't we?
Really like him.
Done a great job.
But we went there and we absolutely took them apart. So we know what we're capable of, even up against a good team.
Is that what we're relying on? We've beat one team. Schoolboy, is it?
Well, we went to Watford, thumped them. Went to Coventry, thumped them. I would be bang up for us going to Portsmouth and thumping them.
I mean, it looks like we should be okay, doesn't it? We've got far superior quality than them. I mean, Fratton Park isn't always the easiest place to go to. It's quite tight, the stadium. I don't know. In recent years, I think, in terms of stats, again, if we're going off that, I don't think we've got out of 5 games last times we've played them. I think it's like 4 draws and 1 win. So it's not going to be as easy as everybody thinks. But we've still got it by far enough in the tank to, if we turn up and go about it, then we should hopefully come away with a good 3 points again.
Maybe the early kickoff just takes the heat out of it a little bit. I know that the atmosphere's struggled a little bit at Ellen Road with the early kickoffs. maybe Fratton Park can have some of the fizz taken out of it by the fact that it's on Sunday lunchtime, because nobody should be going to football at noon on a Sunday. Nobody.
That knobhead with the bell.
Did you see that? I think he got turned away from a game recently, didn't he?
Did he?
Yeah, denied him entry.
He was once sat right behind me at an England game, and it was absolutely insufferable.
Did he have a better bell?
He did. He just
Was
rang.
he singing "Play Up Pompey" all game as well?
It was just a ringing of a bell about an inch from my ear, and I was just thinking, for God's sake.
Did you confront the man, or did his tattoo
No,
scare
it
you?
was terrifying.
Yeah.
And I'd have been about 17 as well at the time. It's when England were playing at Old Trafford, so it was like in the post-Wembley era.
Right.
It was in then, but yeah, it was not much fun to be sat in front of, I've got to say.
Presumably, then it's almost a full weekend away if you're on co-coms doing the Pompey game.
Go down tomorrow afternoon, I believe. I think Johnny's driving, maybe stay in a hotel. So for me, it works quite well. For most fans, though, getting up at maybe 4 a.m. I'd 5-hour travel, get there, maybe you get one drink in before kick-off. Yeah, I mean, like you said,
how many does Pompey have before kick-off?
That is a good question. I'll let you know. I'm not too sure, mate. He's got something maybe in his coffee
flask.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'm only kidding. He's obviously the ultimate professional, but but yeah. I mean, it may have an impact on the atmosphere. It'd be nice, but when Leeds come to town, everybody else seems to like up the game, doesn't it? It's the biggest game of the season for them, so I'm sure they'll be making some noise.
What sort of a game do we expect? Do you expect a dominant performance from Leeds? You'd like to see us just dealing with this little bit of fear that's crept in this week. I think a good start where people can watch it and go, I recognise this.
It's going to be very different to the last run of games, because we will have a lot of possession. It will revert back to being the team with the ball for more or less the whole game, I would guess. And they'll be probably playing in a similar way they did at Ellen Road, which was to hit us on the break. Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, they did get quite lucky at Ellen Road. Everything that hit went in, didn't it? It was it felt a bit of a robbery.
Yeah, they scored one sort of near stick where I thought Melee might have been able to slightly better. Then I think that was one a penalty.
It was a late penalty, and then
they
it was a banger, wasn't it? I think it was that Callum Lang scored a great goal from about 30 yards.
Yeah, Lang got 2. He took the penalty as well.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and so he scored 90 plus 2, and then Aronson levelled it and then could have won.
Yeah, that chance at the end when he dragged that shot wide. It was entertaining, but it's a bit of a shock to the system. We didn't expect that at the first game of the season, did we? But going down to Fratton Park, like Michael said there, I think we'll be in most dominant control. And yeah, they'll probably sit back in and try catch us on the break again.
Worth looking at the lineup from that opening day, because it'll be quite different. So if Meslier was in goal, Bogle at right back, and I remember those early games, you kind of like, oh, he looks a little bit erratic, I think, maybe in those early days before he'd settled. A vastly different player now. Centre backs Rodon and Strauch, which obviously you're going to see again. Firpo at left back, but then Ampadu and GRUEV in midfield, which it was in the before times before we realised that we had Rothwell and Tanaka who could go out there and dominate midfield. We'll address the midfield question in a minute or two, but we know Ampadu's going to be out. And then you've got James on the right, Nonto's on the left, with Jorginho Ruta tucked in at number 10 behind Matteo Joseph, and it's not going to be Joseph, it'll be Pirro, and obviously Solomon. This was before Solomon as well. So I think we're a different team, we're a better team. Midfield in particular, though, what are you going with?
I'm sticking with Rothwell. I know obviously there's the temptation for Farke maybe to go back to sort of bringing GRUEV back in for that little bit more stability away from home, but I feel like when we're going to go there and probably dominate most of the possession, I'd like to see Rothwell back in there. I don't think it was his most amazing game against West Brom. Him and Tanaka, both of them, they weren't quite fully at it, and usually, the passes are bang on. Some were going a little bit astray, but they weren't the only ones. That was just a general rule of thumb throughout the game. But I'd just like to see him get a run of form and build that relationship that we saw so well for that middle period of the season between him and Tanaka. Was really good football. And they both can do it. I feel like Tanaka doesn't get enough credit for the defensive side of things. I don't think Rothwell's quite as good as Tanaka at it, but that relationship between the two, they come always do with a little bit of both. So I'd like to see him play again. I
like how attacking he is. It's been said loads on this show across the course of the season, but just how progressive he is in terms of breaking the lines, getting through people, running at people. It scares players being run at, presumably. And because, what does it do to players? If you see somebody who's bearing down on you, who's intent on getting it 10 yards forward, how do you react to that?
It's difficult to stop. You either make a really good, well-timed challenge or you foul, and usually for that sort of role, he's progressing into that deepest stage of the pitch, so you're getting free kicks in good areas if he does get brought down, but it is a really sort of difficult one to stop because he's a lot of sort of that role central midfielders are break the lines with passes, whereas you break a line with a body, a man run with the ball, you've already got an excess body there and you've taken one out of the game, so it just frees up that little bit more space for then your runners. And in terms of when he does run with the ball, he looks really quick, doesn't he? Like, he doesn't look as quick off the ball, but when he's got it, he just looks really sharp and he close control drives at players, and then he's got that quality as well to find that final pass, which, you know, some of our other players in that final third aren't quite as good at him as it.
Yeah, I'd go with Rothwell too, just because I think it's likely they'll set up defensively. And what you've described there of just when a team's set in with 4 banks of 5, sometimes 2 banks of 5, sorry, is what we sometimes see.
4 banks of 5.
4 banks of 5 will be a little bit difficult. But yeah, having someone who's able to beat someone and then it starts dragging other players out of position, it just opens up space, doesn't it, in a way that maybe when you're just trying to work it in a side-to-side passing way, which was kind of the frustration towards the end of last season, wasn't it? Yeah. That we felt like you were just watching the same passage of play over and over again. Having Rothwell there, it does just start to stretch things. And looking back, actually, they drew their home games against Sheffield United and Burnley were both 0-0.
Right.
So it maybe is an indication as to how they're going to set up in this game as well and just try and get out of it with a point.
So with that in mind, and you've both advocated there for Rothwell, would you be disappointed to see GRUEV start? And that's no reflection on GRUEV's abilities. He's just a different type of player to Rothwell. Well,
I'd like to see Rothwell start, yeah. I don't think Tanaka's probably at risk of getting dropped, is he? You know, he's been sensational and it seems to be either Rothwell or GRUEV. But yeah, for me, I would be a little bit disappointed, but like you said, it's nothing personal against GRUEV. You know, he's very good at sort of breaking the game up, and you know, his passing's decent, but it's not as progressive as Tanaka's and Rothwell's. And like Michael referred to there, you know, where a game where people are sat in, you want that person who can break a line, whether that's through a really good pass or running with the ball. And yeah, it seems maybe GRUEV's a little bit more prone to going sideways. So yeah, total agreement, Michael.
I'd be all right with GRUEV starting if Farke was the sort of manager to make an early change. Like if at half time he then goes, right, this isn't working, bring Rothwell on, but you kind of know you're going to have to wait until at least the hour mark before
if he makes a change at half time, it feels like something's gone drastically wrong.
Or someone's injured.
Yeah, so...
and I don't want that to happen.
No, exactly.
Either of those
I'd
things.
be kind of all right with GRUEV starting to almost feel your way into a game and see how it goes. And I think we've seen the impact Rothwell can have off the bench, because some players struggle to get into games, I feel like, off the bench. Yeah. Whereas Rothwell, he doesn't. He seems to wants the ball straight away. He kind of gets involved with stuff. He's instantly on set pieces and making a difference there. So I feel like he is someone who can make a difference from the bench. But you're weighing that up against Farke's use of subs and the fact that he does tend to like to leave it late. And given that, I'd rather he just started.
I think you referred to his set plays there. They've been brilliant. I mean, I feel like GRUEV's got a lovely left foot. And I was watching the highlights of the Portsmouth game earlier from the first game of the season, and you know, he had a lovely free kick on the edge of the box where he hit the crossbar, and there was two or three times where we hit the crossbar in that game as well. But for me, the corners, you know, when Rothwell's on sort of corners in those areas, the delivery is just that little bit flatter, and it's harder to defend. GRUEV's got, like I said, a nice foot, but it's a little bit loopier, not as much pace on it, and it's easier to defend. So for that reason as well, I'd put Rothwell in.
And Strauch, obviously, again on the end of these, we've seen in recent weeks, haven't we, how much of a threat that is, and it's another way to score goals. Yeah,
and last season we didn't really utilise that, did we? And you know, maybe it is a good thing that we've got both Rothwell and Strauch fit at the minute for that reason. You know, I think without Strauch in there, we're not quite as strong on the set plays as it seems like Rodonier. I think we maybe have won this season from set play. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you don't really look like anybody else is going to score, do we? You know, in the wide areas, we've got players who are relatively small. And then that's 2 central midfielders. Yeah, they're great with the feet, but they're probably not the most aerial threat.
Just going back to that West Brom game, something you touched on before, Aidan. When the passes just don't quite work, sometimes it's not that it's bad, it's just a little bit under par, a little bit off peak. Did you identify that in the West Brom game? My eyes told me that. So they're just not quite connecting the passes, or maybe they'd be hit slightly behind a player, or the weight's just not quite right. Why does that happen sometimes?
I think sometimes it's mental fatigue. I know people question that maybe. But when you've come off such a high as the last 2 games, your Sunderland and your Sheffield United with your last minute winners, etc., and then you've started the game relatively well against West Brom. The first 10 minutes we were decent, and then it just seemed like we scored, and then just took our foot off the gas. And I just put that down to like a bit of a hangover from the 2 games, and just mentally, just everybody looked a little bit flat as well as physically. You know, it didn't look like our runners weren't as quite as sharp. You know, someone like Solomon, who's usually so lively, he looked a little bit flat. So I just put it down to mental fatigue more than anything, because I do think we've got really good passes of the ball, and it just wasn't quite clicking, was it? So that's my view on things.
Now, what about physical fatigue? Because off the back of those 2 previous games, you think they just want to get out there and play, but I suppose these are 2 different facets of things you've got to contend with in a game.
Yeah, obviously you had decent amount of rest. Was it 6 days between the games? So you won't really look at that and think, well, they should be fine, shouldn't they, really, to turn around modern day athletes? But I feel it's more the emotional side of things just drained them, and that's why it just looked a little bit flat for me. I don't think they're obviously physically really good specimens, but yeah, just mentally just weren't quite at the races.
And do you think maybe scoring early as we did, I'm not saying it led to complacency, but it's a game state they're so familiar with, being 1 in front, and they have that feeling that when you get 1 in front, we go and win from here. That's just what we do.
Yeah.
And that maybe because it was a bit more difficult than they're used to across the course of the season, that the air just came out of it a little bit, and that's why it turned into a bit of a grind, because West Brom were a decent side, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was a case of they were trying to showboat, or they just like thought this is going to be easy from here in, because we've been here so many times this season and we just walk over teams once we go 1-0 up. I don't think it was a case of that. I think it was just the case of they went 1-0 up, and then it was like, oh, we can breathe a little bit without being complacent. It was then just the next pass just wasn't quite there, and then the one after, and it then just became an accumulation, and then the momentum drops out of the game, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to string passes together, and then it just seemed to like go flat, didn't it? Like I said, West Brom were a team that wanted possession of the ball, didn't quite have enough sort of to break us down, but from that set play, which we should have probably done better in my opinion, but yeah, the passing just wasn't quite as crisp and quite as sharp and decisive as we usually see.
So when you have one of those games as a pro, how do you not arrest that slide, because it's not a slide, but how do you deal with that? Will they have had conversations about that on the training ground, that it wasn't quite there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look back on the analysis. At half time, it was clear to see, and I'm sure it had got addressed, but sometimes you just, for whatever reason, you just can't quite click. You know, you don't have every game where you look as, you know, slick as a Barcelona team or whatever. It just doesn't always happen. So sometimes you have to find a different way to win. You know, we can't always be perfect with our passing. So whether that's a set play, you know, another last minute goal, whatever it is. I mean, Josie probably should have scored that goal where he's done sensational, to be fair, with that drive at the ball, and then just that last minute where it gets down that left hand side, wasn't he? He went away from like 2 or 3 players, did everything right. It was just that last minute finish, just seemed to scoop away from him a little bit. And then Dan James had a couple of chances, didn't he? But you just got to find a different way to win. You know, it might be a scrappy goal, whatever it may be. You can't always have the perfect goal.
I'm just thinking back now to the League One promotion season, which the march of that was fairly catastrophic. It was the run of games. I've looked back on it. I kind of have got mental scars from it. But we beat Tranmere 9th of March, but then we go to Southampton, lose 1-0, home to Millwall, lose 2-0, away to Norwich, lose 1-0, home to Swindon, lose 3-0. And then we get out of that. We break that run with a win at Yeovil, which is Richard Naylor coming up with goals. And that sort of reset things weirdly, but it was Richard Naylor scoring goals, which he didn't particularly do. But around that period, like, how was the feeling within the squad? Because I remember it felt like the world was falling apart for a time.
You're excluded a little bit from the outside world, like you purposely put yourself in a bubble where, you know, we're not listening to what the press say, etc. You know, we're just focused on what we've got to do, and then there's a belief that you're going to get yourselves out of it, no matter sort of what the run of form says. You know, a Leeds United team in League One, yeah, it took us a good little while to get out of it, but such a club like that, they need to do it ASAP, and it was just a belief amongst the players that, yeah, we've had a blip and we can pull ourselves out of it. You know, again, whatever that may take, it may not be the prettiest of football, and it certainly wasn't at times. And like you say, other people have to step up and contribute. And, you know, Nails did that really well at that time from, you know, various sort of goals, but mainly from set plays. And referring back to sort of the Rothwell situation, I feel like Rothwell's got that better delivery for the current situation.
So, AIDY, what are the conversations that are taking place in the dressing room going into a game like this off the back of 2 dropped points? Will there be any sort of nerves around the fact that all the other teams won in the promotion race and we didn't, and we drew, we dropped points, they've closed that little gap? Are you aware of that, or do you shut that out, as you were sort of saying there?
I mean, you're aware of it before, but as soon as you go into the game and it kicks off, you just switch, don't you? I mean, we may have the added benefit of the 2 teams. You know, you got Sheffield United playing, I think it's Preston, and then we've got Luton playing Burnley, both on the Saturday. So, you know, hopefully, I believe it's Saturday anyway, but hopefully that, you know, it'd be nice if one of them slipped up, and then it just gives you that little bit of extra breathing space. But when it comes to kick-off and you're playing the game, everything like that just goes out the window. You're not in the back of your head thinking, oh, you know, Sheffield United lost or whatever. You know, we really need to capitalise on this at the moment. It's just another game of football where you try to do your job and you try to win. And like I said earlier, whatever that may be, you know, it may be a wonder goal, may not be, but it's just getting about the 3 points and getting out of Portsmouth, innit? So. Is
this about doing the work? Again, I think it's a thing we've touched on a few times as a pro, where you fall back almost, I suppose, on muscle memory, or the things you've done all season, the work that you've put in. You put in the work on the training ground. I know it's the cliche, but then you then hope that because you've done that across the whole season, that will then pay dividends when you get back out onto the pitch. You fall back on the things that you know from before.
Yeah, I feel that has got a big contribution to it. I feel like, you know, mentioned that maybe 2 points dropped. That is one way to look at it, isn't it? But coming off the back of, you know, 3 difficult games, 7 points out of those is decent. So maybe, you know, it was 1 point in the right direction. So that's another way to view things. In terms of, you know, the muscle memory, then, yeah, it just becomes habit. Winning for me, a lot of the time, is habit. When you find you're in one of those seasons where you are getting promoted, you just feel a little bit invincible, and you're not really letting one result rock you. You know, you just carry on going, just churn them out, and then pick up those points, and then you look back with maybe last 3 or 4 games of the season and go, right, this is really it now. This is our chance to get over that line. And you look at the distance between you and the teams around you at that point.
Yeah, it's what Farke's always said, isn't it? Last 10 games, I think he always he said is the point at which he will look at it properly. And if we come out of it with another 3 points, then, I mean, it's a tremendous haul. If we win on Sunday, we'll be getting up towards 2.2 points per game across the course of the season, which is a phenomenal return, isn't it? Phenomenal.
It's not bad. It isn't bad. And yet,
what would you like?
And yet, everyone's still quite stressed by it. But I think crucially, it feels like this group of players shouldn't be stressed by it. There's a lot of experience in there this time around. In maybe it was lacking a bit last season with key players like Somerville and Ruter. They maybe didn't have quite the experience of it. Whereas you compare that to sort of Solomon and Tanaka, who are seasoned internationals, have played, you know, hundreds of games in their career, played different countries. They've kind of they've been there and done it a bit more, I suppose. So that you would think there's a bit more confidence there. Although, mind you, I'm not sure you get more confident than Somerville.
I also feel like, although we've had a few changes in personnel, you know, the majority of the squad were here last season, so they know the pain and that feeling of, you know, getting to that Wembley and getting beat, and they won't want to go through that again. They're not thinking about playoffs. I don't think anybody is at the minute. We were just thinking, right, automatic, get it done, get it as quick as we can, and then, you know, we can all enjoy ourselves, and as fans we can just have a bit of a breather, because we all are mentally scarred from previous experiences, aren't we?
I've got to confess, I had a Wembley anxiety dream this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was after we heard on propaganda from the Burnley fan desperate to go to Wembley. That night I had a dream that I went to watch Leeds in the playoffs. Although it wasn't, I'd gone to Wembley to watch an England game, but then I ended up going to a pub to watch Leeds on the phone. I can't explain how it worked exactly, but it was the playoffs and it wasn't going well. Yeah,
looking back on that starting 11 from the playoff final, you're right about the inexperience. Like the 3 behind Joel Piroux, who'd never been in that situation before, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think he's been in a playoff final, and he wasn't perhaps firing in the same way that he is now. He's just not quite hit the same level last season as he has done this. He's starting to just get there now. You got Somerville, who, if you know reports are to be correct, is quite individualistic in his outlook and his style. Right. Very young man. Ruter, still a very young man. Still, his first proper full season in England, I suppose. And Nonto, who was just a mere boy. And actually, Nonto will benefit from the experience of losing. He won't want to go through that again, I presume. And then you've actually got Dan James, who's that bit older, coming into his peak years now. And I know Aronson is still quite a young man, but he's performed at a higher level. He's been in sort of crucial like Champions League games and things like that. So it's a slightly different feel to it, I think. I think there was probably a little bit of there was a lack of experience, I think, in that playoff final.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that, though. But you've also got players that were there as well. You've got your Rodon, your Ampadu, which will be drilling into the other players. Look, let's get this done. Get as many wins as we can, early as we can. We don't want it to even dream up, Michael, about that, do we? So just get it done. But yeah, I mean, Wembley's a different experience to sort of those playoffs. It's not like the league. It's a really weird feeling. The occasion, the pitch, the atmosphere. Although it's 80,000, it's not like Ellen Road. It's different. It's a different noise. Obviously, the added pressure of Leeds United, I feel that has a weight on everybody in sort of those situations. So it can get to people who haven't been through it before. And like you said, there wasn't many last season who had been in those certain situations. Whereas now, like you said, we've got international players who play in those sort of stadiums 6, 7, 8 times a year. So we have got a little bit more sort of experience in that manner. Yeah,
and even like Junior Firpo, he's 28 years old. He was in his peak years last end of last season for that playoff final, but he's not going to want to repeat that. And presumably, this is the end of Junior Firpo's time at Leeds. He's going to want to go out on a high, and you've seen the determination that's been in his mind, and it's kind of manifested itself in disappointment when things have gone wrong. Like, for example, Meslier at Sunderland, he stormed off down the tunnel, did Firpo, wouldn't it? So I think he really wants it this season. So maybe there's kind of just a renewed vigour for getting this one over the line. It doesn't apply to Firpo either, but for the rest of them as well, you've got to remember there's an absolutely enormous financial incentive to get there. Yeah. For as much as people will say sometimes the two things that coexist is footballers don't want it enough and footballers are mercenary bastards. These two things can't be the same because they're going to double the money if they go up for the majority of these players. So it's a massive incentive. You'd imagine so. I may have an incentive though because you get bonuses and things like that as well. So I have no idea what the situation is with regarding the club's bonuses, but sort of when I was a player, you get promotion bonuses. Say you. That was Ken Bates. That was Ken Bates. So it's probably about 15 quid. Yeah. I can't remember, Michael, to be honest with you, probably. But a day out at Flamingo. We did do that on multiple occasions as team bonding. Petting a lemur. Did you get free tickets to the Rod Stewart gig? Didn't. No, not even that. No. Or the Kaiser Chiefs one. Shocking. AIDY, thanks for coming in. Pleasure. Have a safe trip down to Pompey, and we'll catch up sort of towards the end of the season and find out how the running's going, and we'll find out what Pompey's been up to on your travels as well. Yeah, amazing. Take care. We'll see you soon. Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
The Square Ball Podcast.